I have some fond memories of my time living in Texas, but boy, have they been going through a rough patch, and it's getting rougher. So here are a couple of updates of what the Texas state government and their governor have been getting up to recently. First, on voting, they don't like it and they don't want it. So they're following in the footsteps of multiple other states, including Florida and Georgia, that have been cracking down on voting rights. Just last night, actually, they approved new, more restrictive state election rules after a session that lasted from late in the night into the early morning, with Democrats trying to stop it, trying to amend it, but unsuccessful because Texas is dominated at the state level by Republicans. The bill would make it a felony to provide a voter with an application to vote by mail if they hadn't requested one. A felony, or to use any public funds to facilitate the third-party distribution of mail-in voting applications. So, I mean, it's the clearest thing in the world. They just don't want you to vote. And if you're some volunteer, Yasmin, who's like trying to help people to vote, like they could send you to prison for it.
Yeah, I do volunteer
state,
and help people to vote. I do that stuff, so it's crazy. And especially the part about how it's a felony now to send ballots to someone who didn't request one. That's in direct response to what happened during the 2020 election. I definitely in Houston, I think maybe in other Texas cities. Most Texas cities, for people who don't know, are actually blue. The only major Texas city that is not blue is Fort Worth, Texas, and we don't talk about them. But in Houston, I know that our guy, the guy who is in charge of our election process basically, and he was an interim, so he was filling in, but he did a lot of really progressive moves to help people vote during the pandemic. And one of those moves was to send mail-in ballots to people throughout Houston. And immediately the state came in and said, you cannot do that. There wasn't, as far as I know, there wasn't any rule against it. I don't think he broke any laws or anything like that, but he immediately was shut down, and now they passed this legislation. And there's so much going on in Texas right now. Yesterday was hard because so many things were coming out and everyone was worse than the other. And I'm sure we'll talk about more. Yeah,
why don't we actually? Yeah, let's turn to more, because the name of the block is Texas is Hell, and it's not just because of the voting. Basically, they are making clear to the people of Texas what their priorities are, and they're identifying things that are dangerous. So, what's dangerous? Mail-in voting applications. What's not dangerous? Handguns. That's what I'm getting out of them, because Texas Senate just 2 days ago passed a bill that would remove permit requirements for people to carry handguns in public, moving the bill one step closer to becoming law. They call this constitutional carry. Why? Because they think it sounds cool and they think it'll fool you into thinking it's some sort of right that you should be able to have whatever weapon, wherever you want, anywhere you want with no restrictions. That's not what the Constitution actually says, but they throw the word in there to bamboozle you. So that term appears in this graphic, but understand there's a direct quote, and I don't support it. Texas Governor Abbott said people are already allowed to have constitutional carry for long guns in the state of Texas. This just adds handguns. Someone has to still go through a background check when they buy a handgun. So yes, it is true. It does not make it necessarily any easier to buy the gun. But now, if you just want to like have guns and walk around and try to scare the hell out of people, and maybe, just maybe, shoot yourself in the crotch in a Home Depot, it has become slightly easier to do that in Texas. So thank you, Governor Abbott and Texas Republicans.
Yeah, what's so frustrating about this too is, obviously it's Texas, we're a gun state. I think that Texas, and I'm originally from the Northeast, so I feel like I have a good perspective on this. Texas does kind of get both sides of the gun control argument. Guns are a big part of the culture in Texas. Do with that whatever you will. But we're not so anti-gun either. And something like this, though, it's terrifying. I was at a Democratic, it was just like an event, not really a rally, just an event for a Democratic group here in Houston. And there was some people there from the Republican counter party. And they were there and they were just sitting there, and we were in a public park and they had their guns on them, visible, which was incredibly threatening. We called the cops couldn't do anything about it. And this was before the Senate even passed this like insane law. And there was children in the park and they were fine. The cops couldn't do anything about it, and it was terrifying. It feels very unsafe. And especially after considering what happened in El Paso, it hurts. It's a really big blow.
Yeah, just having tons of people carry guns around increases the chance of accidents that could injure or kill themselves or others. It increases the likelihood that people will just leave their guns somewhere. It happens all the time. And by the way, you might say, oh, no, but like they gotta come on, they wanna be well trained. No, they're specifically stripping away the permits. Like they're making it easier. This is not, it's an important right. In fact, it's a duty to have your gun, but we wanna make sure that you're well trained. No, it's just everybody, just have your guns around. And honestly, like if you're a Texas Republican and you like the idea of this, you think it's constitutional, just imagine any other country. I know it's difficult because you've never been to one and you don't want to, but imagine you're in the Middle East and there's just a pack of people, there's people and then there's a pack of people with guns. What do you think about the relationship between those two different groups? Anywhere, imagine it anywhere in the world. And you know that you don't like the idea of packs of people who both carry guns around everywhere they go and really think that should be core to their politics. You are just willing to make an exception for yourself here because it's you and you like the idea of trying to intimidate liberals or whatever. But it is the same thing. And it's not good, it's not constitutional, it's not moral, it's not religious, it's not any of that. It's compensation and trying to intimidate people and maybe laying the groundwork for some more political violence, which Republicans have become much more comfortable with over the past few years. Anyway, any final thoughts, Yasmin, on Texas? Any word of defense
they're about to get rid of abortion rights too. So that's another thing that we're also dealing with. So it sucks here. That like this last week especially, they've done a lot. And for the record, just so you all know, the Texas state government is completely Republican controlled, even though, as I said earlier, most of the Texas cities are all blue. They're all Democratic. So this is not fun for a lot of people. And they redistrict the hell out of all the districts too. After every election, every time they lose a seat or they're even threatened to lose a seat, they make it even harder. So
exactly, yeah. I mean, and that is why you can have gradual shift in voting demographics in Texas, but they just stuff more people into a couple of specific congressional districts, diluting their power, or in some ways concentrating it, but with the minimum possible representatives. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.